Hey y'all, it's Qurissy from the future, and I'm coming reporting live that unfortunately this episode we had a technical difficulty. My lovely guest, you should see by the title, Alexxis Jackson, video messed up during our recording. So we decided to go through with the audio version and just, you unfortunately cannot see our gorgeous faces or any of Alexxis's gorgeous work. So make sure y'all hit that show notes this week, okay? But it's still an incredible episode. The audio is absolutely crisp. So you have a full episode to listen to all the beautiful gems Alexxis dropped. So please stay tuned. Let's get into the episode. Hey, I'm Qurissy, and welcome back to Photographer Life Check, where we check in about all things image making. I'm your host, Qurissy, and today we have the incomparable Alexxis Jackson. Hey.
Aww. Thank you. I'm really happy and excited to be here. You know, I love like sort of what you all are doing here and like the conversations that you all are having. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We're happy to have you here too. And with that in mind, I'm going to jump straight into the photographer fit check like we always do, because eventually this podcast will be in person so we can really give the full rundown of everybody's fit. But for now, let us know something that you're wearing, why you love it, how you showed up today.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't have shoes on because I'm at home, but I am going to stand up so that we can see. And I'm going to take the microphone with me so that so to make sure you can still hear. It just occurred to me. I'm like, clearly I can just do that. Anyway, okay. So can you see me?
I can, yay.
Okay, so the funny thing about this shirt, because I actually got this like relatively recently, and I sort of hate and love the whole like algorithm thing that's happening with the internet now, because like IG clearly knows who they're marketing to, because they're like, we're going to put Satoru Gojo and Tupac Shakur on a shirt and we're going to sell that to Alexxis. And they got me because all these years Instagram has been showing me ads for stuff, and I have never actually, you know what I'm saying, like bought anything off Instagram. And I saw this and I was like, all right, y'all got me. Go ahead, take my money. I'm gonna buy this.
But why is it and then, like, so fly though?
Right? I love this shirt. And then I have like my little sort of like baggy, like harem pants to sort of like also look like a skirt, because that just sort of fits my aesthetic. You know, like I love to, you know, be comfortable, but also be fashionable as much as possible. With the shirt though, the thing that I love about it, and the reason why I was like, okay, you all definitely know who you all are advertising to, is because like, I always like to say that I feel like I'm sort of an amalgamation of like a bunch of different, there's like a bunch of different parts of me, you know? And like growing up listening to hip hop, growing up listening to like, you know, rappers like Pac, etc. And then also being like a huge like gamer and like anime nerd, you know, putting Tupac and like Gojo on the shirt together. I'm like, this is clearly made for me. You know what I'm saying? And I just love a good genre mashup in general. That's like a big part of my identity. Cause like I said, also growing up listening to hip hop, also like loving like, you know, rock music, metal music, etc. Like I love a good genre fusion. And I feel like this shirt is a genre fusion the way that Alexxis is a genre fusion. You know what I'm saying?
I love when I find things outside in the world like that. Like, this is literally made for me. It got Qurissy written all over it. It's such a such a delicious feeling. Honestly, it's a love-hate relationship with this algorithm, because on one hand, it's like I hate that I'm getting got by these Instagram boutiques, but at the same time, I love finding the things that are just for me.
Right, exactly. Like I said, and then like the thing is, like I said, like Instagram has been serving me ads like all of us for years and years, and I've just been scrolling past them. But like, I guess they knew that I looked at this a little bit too long and clicked on it, because now all of a sudden I'm getting all the rest of the anime, like sort of quirky anime shirts. I'm like, y'all leave me alone. Like the machines are doing too much. The machines are doing too much, and I want it to stop.
That's honestly, that's a class right there. The machines are doing too much. Period. Here's my photographer fit check. Similar to you, I love a baggy pant, but also make it fashionable. These are some Halaras. They're like actually pretty. A corduroy Halara. They got big pockets on them, and then just a regular.
I've been meaning to get some of those.
These are Halaras. Comfy. I'm liking Halara right now.
All right, you've convinced me. That's definitely on my list of things to do, to actually like look at their site and like buy some.
Yeah, I only got 2 pairs of pants by them, but I'm like a Halara. I love, especially on set, like I love a big baggy pant. And then the gold hoops. We twins there. We both got on gold hoops today.
Yes, you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's just sort of like the classic Black girl aesthetic, you know, to have like some big hoops like this.
I feel most like myself in a big gold hoop. I have to. But Alexxis, thank you again for being here. I want to go into our life check now. So, for the people who might not know, which I don't know how they wouldn't, but Alexxis Jackson is a DP, camera operator, and adjunct cinematography professor at Spelman College. She is also a member of the International Cinematographers Guild, Local 600, the Society of Camera Operators, and the International Collective of Female Cinematographers. So once I learned about you and your work, one of my favorite things, not only to see a Black woman DP, which there are only a few of us, but also that you are then immediately taking everything that you learn and do on set and giving all of that information to young students, young cinematographers, people who are trying to get into the role, right? So one thing lots of my listeners want to know, and they often ask, is how to get into the union. People make it like this milestone that we have to hit. I would love to know how you got into the union and any tips or tricks you can let folks know on how they can get into the union.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start off saying something that like people told me years ago before I was in the union is that, it's absolutely like something that you want to do at some point, but you don't want to do it too soon, like if you're not, because like the thing is the union doesn't find work for you, you know what I'm saying? Like it gives you, being in the union means you can work like specific sort of like quality or certain tier jobs, like on those kind of productions, but like it's not like a hiring hall where you go into the union building and there's like job postings, so if you don't have like the network and what have you there to be on union productions, then it might not be a good use of money at first. But like one of the things that I'll say that I didn't take this route, but I know people that have, is the idea of like starting off working in a camera rental house or something like that, where you're getting those hours of prepping gear and working with gear and learning gear, which is also just beneficial from a career standpoint in general.
Yeah.
But it can give you those like hours, and it can also sort of put you in that networking position to meet the people that are coming in to, build cameras, do like what have you for their union job. So then when you're ready to be like a digital utility, or, be trying to work your way up to being like a second ACE, you're trying to be a utility or a loader or what have you, then you have the network to do that, and you have the skill set to do that. And then other than that, like even if you don't want to go that route, like the working in a camera rental house route, it's just, again, like I said, it isn't, I think sometimes people have this view of the union as like where you get in the union and then all of a sudden the work just starts flowing, and that's not necessarily like how it works. So absolutely worth doing 100%, like when you get to a certain point in your career, but just walking into it with realistic expectations that you're not going to join the union and then immediately start getting like a flow of union jobs just like coming to you through a spout that leads to you. That's not how it works. But like I said, sort of going back to what I was saying about like the hours of having your hands on camera gear that you get in a rental house. In order to join the union, you have to have a certain amount of hours in whatever classification you're trying to join, basically, except for I think with the like the lower ones at this point, like if you're trying to come in as a utility or something like that, I don't think you necessarily have to demonstrate hours to them, but I'm not entirely sure about that. And in that instance, I would say, I mean, like if you could absolutely like reach out to like union reps and like people in the union that will be able to give you that up-to-date information in a way that like I won't, because I've been in the union for a little while. But I can tell you, you have to have a certain amount of hours of demonstrated work or expertise, like in your classification that you're trying to join, in order to join the union. So whether you're, a camera operator or DP, whether you're starting from the bottom and like working your way up, or, you have like people that, work in the independent world for a while and then they come into the union in one of the higher classifications, like camera operator or something like that. So that's the relatively long answer. It is like that's sort of the process and the benefits, and the, like I said, absolutely a benefit, but just do it at the right time, because if you do it at the wrong time, you're paying initiation fees and you're paying dues and you're not seeing that work coming in yet, so it might feel like you made that investment at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's a really important take. And I appreciate the avenue you mentioned being the rental house, because actually, no DP I interviewed before you said a rental house. And I think that's such a good one, especially considering, like I surely mentioned earlier, only one, or excuse me, Black women represent only 1% of Local 600. And I think as many ways as we can find out how to get there when we need to get there is really important.
Right. And like to your point about like how few black women there are. And like I always sort of because you hear the term like like underrepresented often. And I always like to say like not underrepresented, like historically excluded. Because I think it's important to draw that like historical context of like how we sort of got to 2026 and these numbers are like as low as they are. But I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, there's like maybe 9 black women union directors of photography. Like it's that low. Like that's how low the numbers are. And then even in terms of just black women in the union in general, we have this org called like 600 Black Women, which is basically like sort of, like we got together, and shout out to Chris Ryregi for like
Really?
putting that
Shout out to
together.
Chris.
Yeah, like so she was really sort of the architect. It started off as like, hey, there's not that many of us, like let's know each other, let's get together. And then it turned into this whole thing that blossomed into like seminars and like yearly sort of conferences, and was like very, very dope. But I say all that to say that like with the numbers that we had, even when that started, it was something like it was less than 100, in the entire union, a union of like 10,000 people, like less than 100 black women,
Literally
which is just crazy to
90.
think about. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
90
Like,
black women. That's
mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, I learned about it because on season 1 of the show, we had Kayla Sellers, who's also a Chicago native. Shout out to Kayla. Yeah, we had, and
Yes, that's my soror.
Period, yeah.
Yes, I got to shout her out. Ooh.
Yeah, shout out to Kayla. We love Kayla over here. But that's how we learned about it, because I was doing research on Kayla at the time. And I was like, wait, this org, what? And then also, I know Erin, and I'm so excited to have Erin G. Wesley on the show. And she's
Yes, that's
in
my
the
girl.
org. Yeah, like it's a couple of people that are in the org that are related to the show, or just like, of course, me being an image maker, I have access. Also, me being a black woman image maker, I have access to these black women where I'm like, yeah, it's only 20 of us in the room anyway. Like, got you type thing. So yeah, it's
Right.
incredible to learn, but also recognizes like how far we have to go. But with that in mind, I'm glad you brought up the historical aspect, because in doing research on your episode, which was really cool, I saw that in 2018 you wrote about why there aren't enough women behind the camera. And you mentioned the way that Ava DuVernay began to take initiative at the time and getting more women behind the camera after some of her major milestones. Like we all know, she was the first Black woman to win Best Director at Sundance. She was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards and nominated for Best Director at the Golden Globes. And then we fast forward nearly 10 years to 2026, when Autumn Cheyenne Duro Arkapaw, I always like struggle with her last name. I'm sorry, Autumn. She became the first woman of color to be nominated and win the Academy Award for Best Cinematography. Almost 10 whole years. And so when I think about that, like, intentional exclusion, after her win, I was really having a lot of conversations with other cinematographers and image makers in general about women in this moment, like what is happening. And it had me thinking about the pandemic, actually, because what I found during the pandemic and like the first maybe 2 to 3 years after is a lot of Black businesses did really well. We were getting like a lot of traction. People, especially non-Black people, were really putting their dollars behind Black businesses and like wanted to at very least appear supportive of us. And then as we've seen over these past like couple years, especially right now, some of that funding and opportunity has shrunken quite a bit. And what that showed me was momentum. It's like, okay, there is a certain time where momentum really picks up, and it's kind of like you either have to be ready for that momentum or you have to come in at a different part. Like you have to catch the wave at a different time. And so with thinking about Black women cinematographers in this moment, I'm wondering if after this Autumn win, do you feel like the tides are changing right now? Like this is a moment of momentum for Black women cinematographers in particular, where people should be like starting to really make traction right now, trying to get it in as many sets as possible right now. Like, have you seen a shift in that tide?
I try to generally strike this balance between like optimism and realism, right? So there's like a few things I want to say about like the way that you set up the question, or like the, what you're sort of the groundwork of like what you're posing here. Because the thing is, it's like, yeah, she won for Sinners, and it was like an absolutely incredible film. This is such a beautiful moment. So many of us were so touched by this win because it was a historic win. Like not only the first woman, period, you know what I'm saying? Which of course then, since there hasn't been a woman at all, we know that means she's also been the first Black woman, right?
Yep.
But it's been like 100 years of the Oscars ish, you know what I'm saying? Like
Literally,
close. I
I
can't
think it
remember
literally just
exactly.
made 100.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 93, but I could absolutely be wrong. The point is, it's near 100, y'all. That's the point that we want to take from this. So in 100 years of Oscars, there has never been ever like a woman cinematographer, you know what I'm saying, that has won that award, you know what I'm saying? And so the thing is, it's like Sinners, absolutely incredible, absolutely deserving. The thing is that there have been like other films that were DP'd by women, you know what I'm saying,
Absolutely.
that were beautiful in their own right. And also, again, just like sort of what I was saying about like even before you get to the film, sort of just the way that the industry is structured and like who gets access to certain opportunities and this, that, and the other, right? So when you said the thing about momentum, I was actually having a conversation with a colleague recently, and I won't name who it was, but like I was having a conversation with a colleague recently. And again, I'm going to try not to get too far on this soapbox. I'm going to try to give you like a relatively like short answer.
Okay.
But specifically what we were talking about is this idea of like how in order to make an intentional shift after like years and years and years of something being an issue, like how sometimes you have to swing the pendulum very intentionally to the other side in order to ultimately get it to rest in the middle. And I feel like we've seen moments of that, like where there was an intentional sort of awareness in the industry or awareness societally for like other things that are sort of similar related, but like not exactly this. And then like the momentum was there, and then it sort of like died out, and we still didn't really get to equity. I think we're absolutely in a significantly different position, and a significantly better position than we were 10 years ago, even just in terms of like what I feel when I'm on set, and like the visibility that there has been for women DPs, for women in the camera department, for women in technical fields in general, grip, electric, etc. And like people getting used to seeing us there and not automatically assuming that we don't know what we're doing or that we don't belong. I used to have so many instances where people would assume that I was the makeup artist, like even when I was literally carrying a camera. You know what I'm saying? There was like one person in particular, again, not going to name names, but like every single time this person saw me, I had a camera in my hand, and they were like, "Oh, do you do makeup too?" Why would I do makeup too? Like, would you ask a man that? You know what I'm saying? It's just this sort of like, exactly, this sort of like inherent bias that people like don't even necessarily realize that they're exhibiting. And while that may seem harmless, what it means is that there were still a lot of people that when they look at a Black woman, they don't see a DP, you know what I'm saying? And that is going to manifest itself in a bunch of different ways, right? So saying all of that to say, like I said, we're in a much better position than we used to be, like 100%. What I was saying about intentionally swinging that pendulum, there have absolutely been instances of that I think have helped, that have been, beneficial, or that have like ameliorated just the sort of overall societal vibe. But at the same time, and this is sort of what I pose, and everybody just hear me out for a second, because this is what I was saying to my colleague recently, like going back to sort of the idea of like affirmative action. And there's like people that have various feelings about affirmative action, right? And like what I was saying to him is that like what a lot of people don't necessarily realize is that like high schools, elementary schools, whatever, like public schools and like the resources that they have are determined by like property taxes. And so going back to like legal, like federal level housing discrimination, redlining, et cetera, like even after, like the veteran bills that were giving people like money for a mortgage, and how they like went to like 3% Black men or Black veterans compared to like white veterans. Just all of these things are sort of going back years and years historically that influence the amount of property taxes or the value of property in certain communities, and how that's still to this day impacting the school system. It's like, yeah, affirmative action isn't perfect, but we got to do something to correct for those years and years and years of federal housing discrimination that is still influencing like the quality and resources in schools that are ultimately going to help people get into college, whether that's like SAT courses or AP courses or certain things that are going to be available in certain areas. Again, going back to that property tax thing. So I say all of that to say, and then I'm gonna step off my soapbox, the same way that like affirmative action may not be perfect, but it tries to at least acknowledge a problem and like do something about it. I think it's important, even in this moment, even as we're seeing this progress, to like, yeah, we don't want to quote punish people for being born in a certain demographic. I get all of that, but we still have to acknowledge that there are like historical things in place that we have to be aware of, and we have to figure out some kind of way to fix it. We can't just be like, oh, it's going to work itself out on its own, because it's
Right.
deeply
Or
seated.
that's just the way that it is. So
Period. Because
yeah.
that's another thing that people absolutely will say. It's like, that's just the
Yeah.
way it is, or the way it's always been, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Like, no, like the first step is like being conscious of it, and like consciously, you know what I'm saying, looking for solutions. And even though like one solution may not be the perfect or best solution, like there needs to be solutions. So I'm off my
Yeah.
soapbox now.
No, not even a soapbox. I mean, I'm right here with you, and I feel like most, if not all, of the listeners that listen to this show would be. If we think about how many things are up against a person who comes from a low income family to even get to college, to even get access to a camera, the amount of things that will have to become available, the amount of things that have to feel like luck to become available to then transition and change the trajectory of your life to then become one of the 1% in local 600 or anything else for that matter. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily even specific to this industry. Like, a lot has to happen, and a lot is working against us, especially not only in these major cities, but don't be from a rural town and you trying to get out the jam. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot set in place in these public schools and in our system that is currently being dismantled also. So
Yeah,
completely felt.
and there's that. Don't even get me started on that, because we'll be
Right.
talking about
We
that
gonna
for
go
two
laugh. It's gonna be a
hours.
whole nother podcast.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not gonna be talking about photography at all. It's just gonna be like, yeah. So we won't do that today. But yeah, say it all that to
Right.
say that like the thing is in like sort of using that whole affirmative action debate is sort of a microcosm of a general societal thing, which is that we have to realize, again, if we're ultimately trying to get to equity for like different demographics that like did not have access to those spaces 50, 100 years ago, whatever, like we just have to, like I said, we have to be realistic about what we're dealing with. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say, like both my parents like vividly remember having to drink out of for colored water fountains. This was not a long time ago. These are my parents, like when they were
Mm-hmm.
kids, had to drink out of for colored water fountains. And so like, of course, back then when that was happening, people of color, or like Black people in particular, did not have access to certain like areas. You know what I mean? Like so
Literally.
many of my like, OGs that I respect in the industry, like talk about the difficulties they had even paving the way for there to be like more Black people in camera or on set in general, and some of the stuff that they dealt with at first. So again, it's just, we have to be realistic about like, we're in a better time, but we're not far away from like the time when like we just were not in these spaces at all. And so again, if we're going to get
Yeah.
equity, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be realistic about it, and we have to face it head on. We have to look at it and like see it with our eyes and not look away from it before we can like I said, ever get to the point where all of those wrongs are undone.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful that they will be. With that in mind, though, what kind of sets do you hope the next generation can inherit?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I mean, like I said, it's getting better. It's getting better. And I don't want to make it sound like, in my rant recently, that it's just, like I said, it is getting better. So I just, I hope that it will get to the place where, the demographics that you see on set are in line, one, with like sort of society as a whole, but also like the stories that are being told in front of the camera, I
Yeah.
think is a really big thing, because it's like, again, sort of going back to that historical exclusion thing, and not to get onto a soapbox about sort of the history of television and like film. I just saw at Spelman this like past semester, I taught a course called Black Women Behind the Lens, Black Female Authorship in Contemporary Film, which was like such a vibe. I really enjoyed teaching that course, because usually I only teach cinematography production courses. So it was
Okay.
really nice to like do something a little bit different. But the reason why I bring that up is because we sort of went over historically like Black women directors, Black women writers and directors, like who were putting out feature films or getting like a theatrical release for feature films. Here, I got to shout out my colleague who's also a professor at Spelman with me, Miss Julie Dash, who was absolutely a titan in her own right. Yes, absolutely, in every right, a titan. But I say all that to say, like, she is known and like and lauded for being the first Black woman writer and director to have a theatrical release for a feature film, and that was in like 1993.
I
That
was about
wasn't
to
a long
say,
time ago.
Julie Dash, the Julie Dash, period.
Yes, you know what I'm saying? And that was like 1993, 1992 or 1993. I'm pretty sure it was 93. But so that was one of the things that we were talking about like in my class, is that again, of course, like Black women directors getting like feature films that were like theatrically released is again very, very new. And so before that, there would be stories with Black women in them or like Black people, but they were not told by us. They were told by like somebody else, like,
yeah, right.
And so to answer your question about like the sets that I hope to see in the future is again like, sets where, and that's not to say that like somebody of another ethnicity can't work on a Black story. I'm not saying that at all. Y'all don't get in the comments and lie on me because that's not what I'm saying, but just the idea of like, again, people in the lives that they live like bring so much to the artistry that they put out or like, their perspective. And so I hope that we get more and more varied perspectives on set and in creative spaces. So that's my answer.
Yeah. I think this all ties into you being a cinematography professor at Spelman, which is so special to me as we're talking about literally the history of being a Black woman in this field and how it's changing. You are also literally taking on that torch and stewarding in the next generation constantly. Every semester, the next generation of Black women in this industry, very specifically behind the camera. And I want to know, what's something you wish aspiring filmmakers stopped worrying about and started focusing on instead?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think about that one. I'm gonna try to answer so that we don't take up like too much time with me thinking about it. But I would say I want people to feel like their voices are valid. Their voices and their stories are valid, and not worrying about whether or not they have something worthwhile to say or something that other people are going to be interested in. And like that's something that I tell my students often, this idea of like why our voices are valuable, even when, like I said, they've been historically excluded or are still a little bit harder to get out there. It's like we have something to say, and we have something to say that like adds to the world or like our understanding of the human experience, because I feel like art is so integral to sort of again like documenting and understanding the human experience, and like people who aren't living your life being able to see those aspects. I think it was Roger Ebert that referred to film as like an empathy machine that can show people perspectives or like lifestyles that they're not familiar with. And so yeah, I would say like for my students and like for other people that are sort of starting out, that's what I want for you all, is to know that you have something to say, you have something to add. No matter how much anybody or society or whatever has made you feel like your voice isn't valuable, like your voice is valuable to the collective, like again, chorus of humanity. So
yeah. Okay, and with that in mind, do you think there is something we should all be concerned about?
Ooh. Again, I be trying to stay off a soapbox, girl, but you gonna put me back on
ahead. Let's step right up.
But to your point, like we're living in a time historically. I'm gonna try not to get like again like too political or like too radical, but we're living in a time historically where to your point, because you alluded to this earlier, like so many of those different things that were put in place to sort of again intentionally swing that pendulum are being dismantled, are being intentionally dismantled. You know what I'm saying? This whole like certain demographic of people in this outcry against quote DEI and quote wokeness, which that grinds that is like the irritation of my soul. The way that like that group of people reappropriated the word woke, it makes my skin crawl.
That's not even what it meant. That's not what it meant.
Oh my God, it bothers me so much. But anyway, so saying all that to say is that like some of those, to take it back to my last answer about like why your voice is valuable and like how it adds to the collective of the human chorus, right? It's like we're living through like times where those voices are trying to be like systematically silenced again. And so I think that it's important, in this time to be even more vigilant. Sometimes I like read words in my head and I like, anyway, even more vigilant, you know what I'm saying, about like fighting against that and like, and still like moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree and relate. I think maybe it's also just a part of aging, but I think it turns into a responsibility. Like I feel so responsible for how I am contributing to the time in order to not only maintain, but further add to what is lost and what was never there. So I really like that answer. I appreciate that. This has me thinking about the people in your life when you first got started. Who made space for you early in your career, and how has that shaped the way you mentor others now?
Early in my career, I feel like this is not like exactly what you're asking me, but I just like briefly want to shout out my dad real quick because my dad like
Hey,
always had a camera in his hands, and I feel
shout
like
out to
that
Dad.
when I was a kid, that's what sort of like got me looking at the world like in that way, and sort of like I think was a big part. Just sort of, I mean, like being surrounded by the arts in general between like my mom and my dad, you know, like seeing plays or what have you, and just reading. I was like always reading. I feel like all of those are sort of like what made me want to be a storyteller in the first place. But like
Yeah.
particularly because we're talking about like photography here, I want to shout him out for always having a camera in his hand and like always making me like want to view the world a certain way, like because of that, like through that lens. And then, so in terms of like mentorship, yeah, I don't know that I had like what I would call like mentorship like early in my career as much as I like sort of, and this goes back to like why it's so valuable to me to be at Spelman, because I hope that I can give those young women the encouragement that I feel like I didn't necessarily get when I was in undergrad, when I was in film school, like saying that I wanted
Yeah.
to be a DP. So, and I've heard so many other women DPs say the same thing, that they feel like they weren't really encouraged or like the way some of their like peers or counterparts when they said they wanted to be a DP. So yeah, but like that being said, I want to give a shout out to like a little bit later in my career, but I've absolutely had, like I said, some of my like, like the OGs or like people that have really paved the way for us, that have like looked out for me in one way or the other. I'll shout out again, Miss
Yeah.
Julie Dash, Uncle Johnny, we call him, John Simmons, ASC, who is really,
Hey. Yes.
yes, who is really also from Chicago, who is
Exactly.
really into, sort of taking us like younger DPs and, giving us like guidance or just like being a great like role model, all of that. So I want to shout him out. Miss Kira Kelly was also like a mentor of mine, specifically
Yeah.
through like the ASC Vision program that I did like a while back. So yeah, I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. And then one person that I will also shout out, who I don't talk to her as much as I used to, and I want to rectify that. But Drea Clark, who was my one of my favorite professors when I did the summer film program at the University of Southern California when I was an undergrad, like she gave me like my first job like right after I graduated, like working at the Slam Dance Film Festival during the festival that year. And so like little things like that sort of, people that saw something in me, or like pulled me to a different, even if it wasn't like a higher level, pulled me to like a different level. I sort of always like use this metaphor of like when you're rock climbing, you may not be going straight up, you might be going like to the side diagonal, but you're still making progress. Like I've absolutely
Yeah.
had people that like gave me the opportunities to like move sideways or move diagonal, even if it wasn't like a straight line up. And so yeah, I've had a lot of people that have done that for me in one way or another.
Yes, you have a stellar list of people that showed up, and that's really beautiful. Also, I always say life isn't linear, and that's what your quote reminds me of too. It's beautiful. Okay. So, in doing research on some of your work, what I saw that stood out, of course, you being a DP, is what your work looks like. And a couple years ago, I photographed some image makers and I talked to them about myopia and their relationship to their eyesight. And I think so much about it being an image maker because I wear contacts, and I think I know almost every photographer I know, or image maker in general, has some amount of poor eyesight. And I thought that was really interesting in that there must be a relationship there.
That's
So first
interesting.
of all, it's so cool. I interviewed and photographed them. It was really incredible. I would love to know, do you wear glasses or contacts?
I do. I do. Like I have in my contacts now. When I
Same.
take these contacts out, I will have on glasses before I do anything, because like my vision has just gotten like worse and worse over time. So I mean, I can still I'm sorry, give me one quick second. I forgot to plug my laptop in, and I just got that low battery notification. I got my charger
Yeah,
right here. I
yeah.
just need to plug it in right now before I forget. And I'm like mid
Okay.
answer. Sorry.
You're okay. When you come back, just restart it. I'm gonna close this door.
Yeah, no, I do. I do. I have my contacts in right now. And when I take these contacts out, I will be immediately putting on my glasses, because before I do anything, because I've definitely sort of noticed my eyesight getting like worse and worse, over the years. I can still, I'm not gonna run into a wall or nothing without them,
Yeah.
but I definitely am not like driving anywhere or doing anything like that without my glasses or contacts in.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you think your eyesight has affected your creative vision?
Ooh, that is such an interesting question that nobody has ever asked me before. Okay, so I'm sort of, this is off the cuff, and because I really do like this
Yeah.
question. So,
Yeah.
real quick story of how I found out that I needed glasses is that I used to work at
Yes.
Foot Locker when I was in high school and like early
Mm-hmm.
college. And so what would happen is if you were in the back of the store, because of course all the shoes are in the back, so you would sometimes have somebody up at the front holding up a shoe saying, "Hey, Alexxis, can you grab this in a 9 or whatever?"
Right.
And so I would be like, "Hold on, I can't see that," and I would have to go closer to see what the shoe was. And one of my coworkers at Foot Locker, this like my freshman year of college, was like, "You need glasses," and I was like, "I don't need glasses, whatever." And then like then I went and like got the eye exam and like put on the glasses, and I was like, "Whoa, is this what the world is supposed to look like? This is crazy." It was like I went from standard definition to high definition. Anyways,
Literally.
but to answer specifically what you asked, like it brings to mind this particular visual that I have in my head of like mornings waking up when I don't have my glasses on or contacts and like looking through the window and seeing this sort of beautiful, what looks like the bokeh in a lens. If you have the lens out of focus, those like
Yeah.
pinpoints of light coming through leaves. And I remember this moment like of, it was like a very specific moment. I can't tell you when it was. I mean, it's been since I lived here, like in this condo that I have now. So that I got this condo in like 2022. So like some point between like 2022 and now, I remember like opening my eyes and waking up and like looking out of the window and seeing this like beautiful, what looked like an out of focus lens to me. And maybe that's why I've never actually thought about this. Again, I can't, but I think that maybe that has to do with one of the reasons why there are certain images that are so pretty to me as it relates to like lens characteristics and how they look when they're out of focus and like
Yeah.
focus fall off and stuff. I never thought about that, but I think that might have something to do with it. So I'm glad that you asked me that because I've never thought about
I
that
think
before.
so.
That connection.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was the reason why I wanted to do that project anyway. I'm like, one, it's funny that we all have poor eyesight. And then two, I was just like, on some research, like if I was really doing research, if this is a research paper, I'm like, there must be a connection then on how we're creating and what our eyesight is giving us. And I mean, on a base level, like none of us are seeing the color green exactly the same, the color blue exactly the same, right? And so when I think about, okay, our eyesight is affecting that, whether we're nearsighted or farsighted, and then we select careers that rely so much on our vision, and what our vision has given us is also what our work tends to look like. And I think it's just like there's so many things, there's so many variables that could support, how your creative vision develops based on what you can literally actually see. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's a mistake. So I really appreciate you sharing that. That was sweet.
No, I appreciate you asking that. Like I said, like in the, however many, like radio interviews or like what have you, or video
Yeah.
podcasts that I've done, nobody's ever asked me that. And I think that's a really good question. It sort of like made me think about something that I hadn't thought about before. So that's what's up. Thank you for asking that.
I'm glad. Yeah. Well, this feels like a good place to take a break. So we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by Art House, the first Black-owned film lab in the city of Los Angeles. Art House specializes in C41, black and white, E6, and ECN2 processing for 35mm and medium format film, using a custom-built cinema scanner to deliver stunning movie quality stills. Pick up or drop off a roll at their new location in Chinatown, and check them out at arthousefilmlab.com or at arthousefilmlab on IG. And tell them we sent you. And we're back. Okay, this next segment is called The Gear Don't Matter. We started this segment because we want to know what the gear that you use that you really love. But we call it The Gear Don't Matter because one of the first things people always ask photographers in particular is what camera you're using. Most people I know, including myself, are of the notion that like it matters less what kind of gear you're using, and what really matters is your vision. But with that in mind, we love our tools. I love every camera, every piece of gear that I have. It helps me make the thing that I want to make. So I still want to shout it out. So what is your favorite piece of gear to use? It doesn't have to be a camera, but it can be.
Okay, I'm gonna give sort of like a twofold answer to that question from like a photography standpoint and then like a cinematography standpoint. Cause I like made a point to have my photography cameras like near me so that I could like shop them out. So
Yes, I love a show and tell.
so
Yes,
this is my dad's old like Rebel 2000 that he gave me like back in November, I want to say. So this is like a 35mm. I have some Art House Film Lab 250D in here right now. that I'm gonna like send off to them for Devin scan. So also shout out to them because that's how like we originally met, was through like Sid at our house. So shout out to them, and I'm really looking forward to developing this film. So again, 35 millimeter here, and then I also have this Hoga 120N, so like medium format. It's like a toy camera. This basically like you just press this button, like there's no frills. You got like 2 things you can change, and that's it. And so it's sort of known for being, huh?
I got the same one.
Yes.
I love a toy camera.
Yeah, it's so quirky and you get like really interesting images, and sometimes it's about just like the feel or vibe of a moment and not necessarily about having like a super crisp and focused whatever.
Literally, yeah.
Yes, I love this. I think I have some Kodak Gold in here right now, and then like also I love me like some Portra. So recently, like I've actually just recently really started getting back into film photography. I'm gonna shout out Uncle Johnny again for that, you know, because he prefers digital, but he always has his like camera. And also there's sort of like an ongoing joke. I feel like that as a DP, you're supposed to be carrying a film camera around. And I actually like, I was in LA recently and I was in Erewhon and I had my little camera, and the cashier was like, "Oh, are you a DP?" Because my brother's a DP. And like, he always has a camera carrying. I'm like, see, it's a universal understood concept. So yeah, so those are my, my film photography, like still photography tools or like cameras that I like to play with. And then from a cinematography standpoint, you know, my favorite camera overall, I would say, is the Alexa Mini LF, LF standing for like large format. That's what I use to shoot the piece for Vogue that I did, and like a camera that I tend to use often. I also use the Sony Venice 1 and 2 a lot for like features and stuff like that. But I will say, like, outside of, you know, you have sort of your sort of quote high-end professional cameras that most of us are going to use, like your Alexas, like your Sonys, like your Reds for some people. And like, so that's one thing, but like lenses, going back to what I was saying about like lens characteristics and that being something that I'm really into and that I pay a lot of attention to, I really like to sort of tailor my lens choice to the project. So like, for example, quick shout out like a feature that I DP'd that just came out today. Like shot that on some thank you. Shot that on some like FD primes because they're really soft and pretty and warm, which I feel like fits this like romantic drama, which is what that film is. And then like for stuff that's a little bit more like, let's say it's a period piece. There was a film that I shot that was a period piece that took place in the 60s. So I used like some Zeiss Jennas for that because they're you know, lenses that were popularized during the 60s, and I wanted it to have an authentic feel. So that to me, as it relates to tools, I don't have like quote favorite tools. I really like to fit the tools to the project and like and what I'm doing. But I will say that I am like a little bit of a camera snob just in terms of like, but I mean, I feel like that's just sort of, there's a reason why certain cameras cost like $80,000 versus some costing like $5,000, like in terms of them being more user friendly to use or having like the various connector points that you need on set to get things done, you know. So but that's one of my favorite parts, is like playing with different lenses and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. But wait, can we talk about your project that's just dropped? Put us on.
Yeah, okay. So it's called South Haven, starring Denise Lawton and Karan Joseph Riley, who's also my Detroit homie. Gotta shout him out. Northwest side of Detroit. What up though? But yeah, so it's like I said, a romantic drama. I'm trying to remember this, like the way that the log line is specifically phrased, but it's basically like, you know, a famous actress returns to her small hometown of South Haven, Michigan to heal the broken marriage of the only man she's ever loved. I think that's what it says on IMDb or wherever. So that dropped today. Like right now it's on Tubi. It'll be on the Roku channel on July 15th. And then I was talking to the director. I think it's also going to be on Amazon Prime at some point, but I don't know when. I don't have a date on that yet. But it had like a really good festival run, and it actually won Best Feature Film in the International Cinema Berlin in Germany.
Let's go.
Yeah, so it just dropped like literally today, or is available for streaming after a festival run and like, you know, winning that and all that. So like I said, it's available to stream as of now. It's called South Haven. You can also, you know, potentially like Google it if you're interested. Like I said, it's a touching little like romantic drama, you know, for us by us, if you know what I mean. So
absolutely. I'm definitely going to put the link. I mean, I know you don't need a link for Tubi. So if y'all are by your TVs, make sure you play that right after you play this. But I'm going to link at very least the IMDb. And if the Amazon or anything comes out by the time this comes out, I'll link that too to make sure people are watching.
Yeah, because depending on when this comes out, like I said, it'll be on Roku on July 15th. So, you know, we're recording this on June 29th. So it'll probably be on Roku by then too.
Perfect. Amazing. Okay. Beautiful. So our next segment is called Photographs Not Taken. This segment is one of my favorites. It's also a fan favorite, which quick intermission. If you, the listeners, want to send in your photographs not taken, you can now. The submit button is also in the show notes. Please, we want to be inside of your memories. Let us know what's up. Okay, back to Alexxis. Would love to know a photograph you wish you would have taken.
Yes. So one, let me say, I'm so glad that you let me know about this question in advance so that I would have time to think about it. And I put so much thought into this. I literally woke up thinking about it this morning, was thinking about it yesterday, woke up thinking about it this morning. And it took me a while to really land on one. And so This is the one that I'm going to go with, because I have a couple different answers I could give. Right. But the thing that jumps out at me again, like I said, I'm originally from Detroit. Still got my 313 number, never changing it. Detroit is home. I travel for work and I'm based in Atlanta, because I teach at Spelman, but Detroit is home and always will be, period. So going back to the days in early college, late high school, hanging out on Belle Isle. If you're from Detroit or you've been to Detroit, you may or may not be familiar with Belle Isle. And I don't know if the kids are doing that these days where they go hang out at Belle Isle after the club or after dinner or after an outing. But that was our favorite thing to do. And it would be big groups of us, sort of parking lot pimping, as they say. People with their cars lined up, freshly washed, you know what I'm saying? Walking around, hanging out, talking to people on summer days or nights, maybe starting at 9 or 10 p.m. And I wish I had pictures of that, at that point. Yeah, because I feel like that's I feel like that sort of really encapsulates the Detroit vibe, or the vibe of Detroit when I was growing up, before the gentrification, before the ways that the city has changed.
Yeah.
And I have so much pride and love for my city. And I feel like that memory, or those images of just the, youth of Detroit hanging out on Belle Isle is something that I wish I had pictures of, and prints of,
Man, you immediately transported me to this spot called The Circle, which is in Garfield Park. If you from out west in Chicago, you already know. And it was the same thing, being in high school. Some of the kids who had cars will pull up in their cars, and we essentially just parking lot pimping, even though it was just it was a literal circle in the park. And people still do that to this day. But yeah, you immediately transported me to that moment where we're just hanging out and kicking it. You with the girls and the guys are there. And it's just oh, I wish I had those images.
Yes.
I feel like we didn't even take photos.
Exactly. And I feel in this day and age, if I was a kid, or I'm saying kid, college age, and I feel if my students heard me calling them kids, they would be offended. Just work with me for a second. But when I was that age, right? If I was that age now, I feel we're always, either going live on the gram or taking pictures or what have you. Whereas at the point that I was social media wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now, you know what I'm saying? And the idea of just taking a whole bunch of pictures on your camera phone of everything, just a different time and a different vibe. And to some degree, those images, back when we would be taking them on disposable film cameras, or when we would be more likely to have prints of something, it's so many little moments like that. It's oh, I wish. We get so used to having a camera in our pocket now, but there's so many little moments that just live in your memory that you can't revisit the image of in that same way, because we weren't but it also makes it more special in a way, that you aren't just snapping pictures all the time. You were really living in the moment and interacting with the people that you were there with. So
truly, I think that's the bittersweet. That's the catch-22. It's and in the moment we are living so presently and really, really there. And then on the other hand, memory can be so fickle that it's there's probably so many people there in the background that I don't remember who are there. But if I had an image, I could see all of them, and then I could reminisce further or something like that. But it's kind of it was supposed to be what it was, so it don't matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sort of to that point, what I was saying about back in the day, making prints, that's something else I'm going to shout out Uncle Johnny for. About this idea of he said this a while back about this idea of a photograph isn't a photograph until it's printed. And I just like, I really vibe with that because like, I think again, in this day and age, because we're so used to having like our camera phones and we're just taking, I have 63,000 pictures on my iPhone, which is ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? But how often do I look at those? You know, it's not the same as having that like photo album that you pull out and like flip through. And so like, that's been another part of me, like sort of going back to film photography recently and getting prints no matter what, is like wanting to have like a physical thing to like flip back and like go to certain memories, you know? And so, yeah, it'd be great if I had like a photo album of like Belle Isle memories from back in the day. But
that would be so sweet. Also, I'm gonna get on my soapbox right now and tell y'all, even if you aren't a photographer, or if you are a photographer and you haven't printed your work, you still can print the photos that are on your phone, and you should make them photo albums. Y'all always talking about something going wrong in the cloud. Print your images, keep your memories, you know?
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay, on to our next segment. This one is called the PLC playlist. So we made a playlist on Spotify for the girls to play when they're on set. And I want to know what you're listening to lately, and then I'll give one too.
Ooh, are you looking for like a specific song or like just
a specific
in general?
song.
Ooh, my music taste is so all over the place. Like if you put my
that.
phone on shuffle, you're gonna get, like I said, you're gonna get metal, you're gonna get pop, you're gonna get Disney songs, you're gonna get anime openings.
You sound like my kind of gal. Yeah, you could drop any. I mean, and we've ran the gambit. We literally had somebody a couple weeks ago give us a Mulan song. We got a couple gospel songs. We got a bunch of rap, a bunch of jazz, a bunch of R&B. Like anything you want to drop is gonna go in the playlist.
Yes. Okay. So the song that I've been playing on repeat a lot this week, this is such a random throwback. It's called Where's the Love by Roberta, Flack, and Donnie Hathaway.
Yes.
So I've been randomly listening.
Rest in peace, the queen.
Literally, like, so again, shout out to Detroit. There's this radio show that comes on every Sunday night called Cruising with Foodie that my mom has been listening to for the last like 40 years, basically. And so whenever I'm back home in the D, I always listen to it with her. And so like on Cruising with Foodie, they played this song, Where's the Love, like when I was in Detroit a couple weeks ago, and it got stuck in my head. I was like, let me go ahead and download this. And like, so I've been listening to it on repeat just randomly this week, even though that song is like super old. So would I play it on set? Maybe, maybe we're packing up gear at the end and we just want to vibe and maybe do the ballroom hustle. If y'all not from the Midwest, you might not know what that is, but yeah. So I've been playing that song a lot recently.
I love this. I also love how Chicago and how Detroit this episode has been. When I was doing research on you, I could not find where you're from at all.
Really?
And so I was really happy. No, it was nowhere to be found.
It says it on my IG. I'm like so like outspoken about Detroit. Yeah, it says made in Detroit in my IG description. I'm like so vocal about it, so maybe I think like on my website it's like originally from Detroit. I'm just like always shouting out the D because like that's such a huge part of who I am and a huge part of my identity that I want people to know. Like no matter, you may come across me in Atlanta, in LA, because I work in LA a lot. I've done shoots in like Harlan, Kentucky, and like La Crosse, Kansas, which I love being in some middle of the nowhere town that I would usually not be working on a film. Yeah. No matter where you come across me, you could take the girl out of Detroit, but you could not take Detroit out of the girl. And that is a big part of who I am. So,
and I love it. I guess it's because I was on your site and then I was looking at like other interviews or other things that were published about you. The reason why I didn't see it. But yeah, I love that so bad. Like literally my Detroit cousin, Chicago and Detroit got a real tight relationship anyway. Yeah. And look, right here, you shouting out Donnie Hathaway on what sounds like a very legendary radio show in Detroit. Like, come on. It's just a beautiful time. I'm loving it.
Yes. Like I said, like right down 94, we used to go to Chicago for the day or for the weekend, like all the time. So I feel like Detroit and Chicago are sort of sister cities in that way. So I feel like I'll vibe with people from like Chicago the same way that I always vibe with people from the D. So
same. Okay, so my addition to the PLC playlist, ever since the week of Juneteenth, I've been in a very like Atlanta kind of vibe. Okay. I've been real deep in a bag. It's been like 03 to 09 on my Spotify as of late. And so one I want to do is Shodaline by Young Dro. I have to ask all right. This. It's been on rotation. One of the greatest songs ever made, dare I say. Shout out to Young Dro for that one. Okay, and last but not least, we have the Shoot Your Shot segment. Here, I like to have the opportunity to have not only the listeners, but me right here, help you manifest your next project, something that you want to do, some partnership you want to come your way, and help bring you a little good juju, a little good energy for that. So, who is somebody or a company you would love to work for? And we gonna make that happen with you.
Oh, okay. I think maybe this is fresh in my head because we were just talking about the playlist, but I really miss doing music videos. Like that was initially like when I was a kid watching music videos like all day, that was what ultimately made me want to be in the film industry because I wanted to direct music videos and then I wanted to be like a DP on like commercials and sort of that morphed and manifested over time to be like just being a DP. But I miss shooting music videos. Like that's what I used to do for the longest, like when I first came out of film school. And so like if we want to manifest that, like me getting the opportunity to like shoot as either as a director or a DP, because I'm mostly on the DP now, like a music video. If I had to name artists that I would love to work with, like FKA Twigs.
Ooh, yes.
That's the first person that popped in my head, but there's like a lot of I've been listening to a lot of like Afro beats recently. But just any, you know what I'm saying, like music video, like if y'all want to, you know, sort of manifest some energy for me to just randomly get the opportunity to shoot a music video, particularly for like artists that are a little bit more on like the quirky side where we can like do a lot of different sort of like interesting experimentation type stuff. With
like
music video. Who?
Or is it Kalela?
I don't know who that is.
Oh my God, you might love her. You like FKA Twigs. You might love her.
I might have to look her. Yeah, send it to me because I'm not familiar. So, if you're listening, I'm sorry I don't know who you are yet, but I'm looking forward to checking you out.
But we know FKA Twigs is listening. If she not, her people are. And we need Alexxis behind that lens. She wants to shoot music videos again, and we see that for her. So FKA Twigs and all the other quirky, cute girlies, get on her line.
Yes.
Alexxis, it's been so beautiful to learn from you today. I really appreciate it. Can you let the people know where you would like to be found?
Yes. So one, thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure, absolute joy, and just such a good conversation, like no dull moments. And again, I want to thank you for having those sort of interesting, like digging deep questions.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you so much for having me. In terms of where to find me, I mentioned IG earlier. My IG is alexxisjackson.dop. So that's ALEXXISS Jackson, then period DOP. Same thing. I mean, if you know how to spell my name, it's really easy to find me all over the place because nobody else really spells their name this way, which is a blessing and a curse because it means that I'm easy to find in a good way, but also easy to find in a bad way. So
exactly.
But
that's how I feel about my name.
Right. Yeah. Did you have a really unique spelling too? So yeah. ALEXXISS Jackson. If you Google that, you'll be able to find me on IG, like my website, which has a lot of like my work on it in case you want to like check any of that out. And yeah, IG is probably the best place to find me. I feel like that's where I'm the most active and like posting, you know, new images from my work or just like images from behind the scenes on set or, you know, when a movie that I shot is coming out or whatever.
Period. Love it. She said, Google her, baby. Easy to find.
I feel like that sound has a certain connotation. I don't want to make it sound like that, like, oh, Google me. But you know, that's like I said, if you know how to spell my name, it's easy to find me everywhere.
But you can, okay. And you can find us anywhere you get your podcast at Photographer Life Check. Also, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and Spotify because that's where you can see our beautiful faces and our beautiful work that we create. And that's what we want you to see. And then you can find me, your host, at QURISSY. Also, anywhere you get your podcast or your images. And we'll see y'all next time. Another reminder, please submit your photographs not taken. I cannot wait to read more of y'all memories. It's been so beautiful to have these mini-sodes. So submit yours and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.